Manchester City alarm bells will be ringing as huge contract decision looms. Manchester City have to decide whether to offer Rodri a new contract as he continues to battle fitness issues with his knee. There have been a flurry of new contracts given out at Manchester City in the last couple of months, but perhaps the hardest decision facing Pep Guardiola and Director of Football Hugo Viana is what to do with Rodri. A week ago, the 29-year-old looked to be making good progress on his return from an anterior cruciate ligament ACL injury, starting 4 games in a row and completing 90 minutes in the first and last of them. But then came the final training session on Friday before City faced Burnley, and the Spain midfielder told Guardiola that he was in a lot of pain in his knee and wasn't fit enough to face the Clarets. Concerningly, it was the same knee he injured in September 2024. That injury was a year ago now, and although the recovery process from such a serious knee injury can always be complicated, alarm bells will be ringing at the Etihad. Rodri made it back to appear in the Premier League in May, then played in the Club World Cup in June. He picked up a minor knock in the final game of that tournament, but returned to Premier League action at the end of August. Those 4 starts suggested he was back on the right track, but the latest bout of pain is a concern. City will wait to see if Rodri is fit enough to train at the City Football Academy on Tuesday morning before the squad fly to Monaco for their second game of the Champions League campaign. Fingers will be crossed that the weekend setback is just a minor issue, but the point has been reached where the 2024 Ballon d'Or winner needs to put together a run of games and a run of performances to allay the fears that suffering such a serious knee injury at this stage of his career will stop him from rediscovering his best form. Even during those 4 starts against Brighton, Manchester United, Napoli and Arsenal, Rodri wasn't at his absolute best. That is probably to be expected, but there are levels of consistency he could do with finding fairly soon. That is pressing not only because, at his best, he is arguably City's most important player, but also because his contract will have only 18 months left to run by January. Real Madrid haven't hidden their admiration for the former Atletico Madrid player. They could consider making their move on a free transfer in 2027, or even trying to do a deal next summer. But City aren't going to rush to hand out a new contract when Rodri has yet to show he is still the same player. When his current contract expires, he will be 31, which makes this a difficult call. Had he never suffered that injury, Rodri would probably have signed a new deal by now. Even still, there were conversations towards the end of last year and reports that he was close to signing in the summer. Right now, it feels like too much of a leap of faith for City. The best version of Rodri is well worth a new contract, but first, they will need to see that version. Manchester City manager Pep Guardiola spoke about an improvement Jeremy Doku has made to his game. Pep Guardiola believes Jeremy Doku has learned how to punish teams when they try to mark him out of the game. The Manchester City star continued his fine form with an assist in the 5-1 win over Burnley. It was a deserved reward after he gave Kyle Walker a difficult afternoon on his return to the Etihad. A jinking run into the box created the first goal when his shot was only part saved and turned back into the net by Maxime Esteve. The assist was significant as well. The Belgian now has more assists for Haaland than he managed in his first 2 seasons at the Etihad. When Haaland scores goals, City generally win games. Guardiola has been pleased with the way Doku runs at defenders, but even more happy with the way he appears to have discovered more what to do when opponents double or triple up on him. The winger's final ball has been a concern since he was signed in 2023, but there seems to have been clear improvement from a player who at the age of 23 still has lots of time to get better and better. I asked the wingers in the final third to go 1 versus 1 or 1 versus 2, and I have the feeling that Jeremy's decision-making in the final third improved like wow. Comparing to the past, he made an assist to Erling and sees the channels, said Guardiola. He's an incredible threat against teams that are a low block and deep. Jeremy is really important, and when the team is transitional, maybe he can struggle a bit, but he had the ball and brought the opponent to the box. Now he is reading good. When Jeremy goes there for the second goal, 2 or 3 opponents go there. They don't allow him to go 1 versus 1 because he's unstoppable. There is no winger over 5 to 10 meters stronger than Jeremy. He can go left or right. Now he is reading when the opponents go 2 or 3, who the other man is to be free to create a cross or an extra pass. He improved a lot, and the second goal is an example of that. Josko made a good cross. and we are lucky that immediately Matthias made a good cross, and we got the third. Doku now has 3 assists in his last 3 league games and has made a strong claim to keep his place in the team. He will face more competition after the international break, with Omar Marmoush and Rayan Cherki expected to be fit when the players return later in October. Pep Guardiola sets Barcelona target for Manchester City. That is the standard. Manchester City fielded 8 academy players against Huddersfield in the Carabao Cup third-round tie, and 2 more from the start against Burnley. Pep Guardiola believes Manchester City's academy is showing the signs it can reach the standard set at Barcelona after 8 of the club's graduates featured in the 2-0 win against Huddersfield in the Carabao Cup. Divine Mukasa, Jadon Heskey and Rygan Heskey all made their debuts at the Acu Stadium and featured alongside James Trafford, Rico Lewis, Nico O'Reilly, Phil Foden and Oscar Bob in the third-round success in West Yorkshire. It was another good night for an academy that has enjoyed plenty of success recently, with Lewis and O'Reilly joining Foden as first-team regulars and Bob shining this season, after injury wrote off 2024/25 for him. Guardiola also pointed to the academy youngsters who have left the Etihad but gone on to shine elsewhere, such as the Chelsea trio Romeo Lavia, Cole Palmer and Liam Delap, as evidence of the quality of players being produced. In Barcelona, we played the Champions League final for the first time against Man United. 7 played at the academy. That is the standard for the top of the academy, the City boss said. To play 1 game, the Carabao Cup, it's a good sign. James Trafford has come back after being built here, and of course in other clubs like Burnley, and Phil, Rico, Nico, that are the other ones. Divine has a huge potential, but we will see in the future. Imagine the other players who unfortunately left. They were top class players above and could not have the space. My God, we would have a starting 11 right now in the first team. Because if you start to count up all the incredible players at other clubs that have been educated being played here in the Manchester City Academy. But it's a good sign that still we have loan players like they are playing a lot. Max Elaine at Watford has been playing really good, and so many of them here have the potential to help us and see what happens. And that's why we have the academy. City have seen some outstanding young players leave the club due to a lack of opportunities, and Guardiola pointed to that as the difficulty facing the academy, with the quality needed to break into the senior setup sky high at the Etihad. At the end, we have top class players that are not here, and everybody knows it, said Guardiola. It's because was a top field of players to win the trebles and quadruples. It was in that moment, in that level. It would not be in that moment. This may be the capability to make a step up. These players would still be here for sure. Manchester City player ratings versus Burnley with 4-6-10 as Jeremy Doku, good player ratings from the Manchester Evening News, as Manchester City beat Burnley 5-1 with goals from Matthias Nunes, Erling Haaland and 2 own goals. Manchester City battled through a stiff test against Burnley to return to winning ways in the Premier League. The Blues made it 7 points from their last 3 league games with a 5-1 win over the Clarets at the Etihad. Jeremy Doku was the star, and his early surge forced an own goal that looked to have opened the floodgates for City. But as they cruised through the first half, they were stunned when Jadon Anthony fired past Gianluigi Donnarumma to level the score. Matthias Nunes scored 1 and then made one inside 5 minutes to calm any nerves inside the ground before Erling Haaland added 2 goals late on. Manchester City versus Burnley in the Premier League as Pep Guardiola's side chase a much-needed 3 points against the newly promoted Clarets Manchester City are set to host Burnley on Saturday as they bid to keep pace with early frontrunners Liverpool. Pep Guardiola's side have had a mixed start to the season and are 8 points behind the reigning champions after being pegged back in added time at Arsenal last weekend. However, with Liverpool facing a challenging match against undefeated Crystal Palace, a victory over the Clarets could see City narrow the gap. Scott Parker's team have made a decent start to their return to the Premier League, securing a win and a draw in their first 5 matches. They demonstrated their ability to compete with top-tier teams after nearly drawing with Liverpool at Turf Moor earlier this month, only to be denied a point by a last-minute penalty from Mohamed Salah. Guardiola is keeping his fingers crossed that Erling Haaland will be fit to face Burnley. The striker was taken off during Manchester City's draw against Arsenal, with Guardiola revealing he was suffering from back pain. Abdulkadir Kusanov, Ryan Cherki, Ryan Ait-Nouri, and Omar Marmoush are not expected to return to action until after October's international break. For Burnley, Jordan Bayer and Connor Roberts are nearing a return, while Zeki Amdouni remains out long-term. Jacob Brun-Larsen is a doubt. First words as Nico O'Reilly signs new Manchester City contract, just the beginning. Manchester City news as Nico O'Reilly signs a new contract at the Etihad. Manchester City star Nico O'Reilly has penned a new contract at the Etihad. The 20-year-old has impressed in the early stages of this season and is highly rated by Pep Guardiola and the City staff. He has now signed a deal with the club until the summer of 2030 with the option of an extra year. He is naturally an attacking midfielder, but has broken through into the first team side at left back and has started each of City's past 4 matches. O'Reilly was particularly impressive in the defensive display at Arsenal and has a bright future ahead of him. He was the subject of transfer interest from Chelsea earlier this year, while a number of other clubs were also linked with the youngster. But City have moved to tie the prospect down to fresh terms. On signing his new deal, O'Reilly said, "This is a day I will never forget. I have been at City since the age of 8, and to have made it into the first team and have played matches